So, welcome everybody to this session of the Postcard Club Summit. Will be very honored to have Gabe Fajuri to talk to us. Gabe, I would like to let you introduce yourself. You will do better than I can do it.
Okay.
Thank you for coming, first of all. And so, introduce yourself. Tell us something about Potters and Potters, when it was founded, or what it is. How long you be involved in these auctions, maybe, or and do you collect postcards?
Okay. Thank you all for having me and for attending tonight. My name's Gabe Fajuri, and I'm the president and founder of Potter and Potter Auctions. I'm talking to you from Chicago, not in my home office, not in my office. And we were founded in 2007 and initially began as a very narrowly focused auction house. We started out selling only items related to magicians and magic tricks, Magicana or magic memorabilia. An easy way to remember that or think about that is to think about Houdini's autograph or the great, you can see behind me some circus posters and magic posters, things of that nature. But for the last 15 years, we've been selling fine art, ephemera, postcards, autographs, slot machines, comic books, all kinds of collectibles, both paper, works on paper, but also some three-dimensional things of sort of an endless variety. And so we do about 24 auctions a year. So about almost every 2 weeks, we're conducting a sale. Next week is fine contemporary and outsider art. And we've sold many postcards over the years, from individual cards to incredibly large collections. And I suppose that's why I've been asked to address the group tonight, and happy to answer any questions I can about the process of going to auction with your collection.
So, do you collect postcards by any chance?
I do collect postcards. So we got started selling magic related things in our auctions, and I do have a number of postcards related to magicians and related subjects. I more often find myself collecting trade cards, business cards, membership cards. I have a lot of ephemera. These bookcases have all kinds of things, loaded up here. And I specifically have an interest in cards related to hand shadows, shadowgraphy as it's known. But you more often find beautiful lithographed trade cards than you do postcards. Although I do have one or two over here on the bookcase that are real photo shadowgraph postcards.
Thank you. So, what are the pro and cons to sell on a auction instead of selling eBay or a direct sale to a dealer or show?
The usual pros and cons that I could list. If you want to give it to somebody else to do the work, you don't have to do it yourself, right? So you'll probably make more money selling the items directly at a show, directly to fellow collectors, perhaps on eBay, depending on if the kind of following you may or may not have on eBay. The eBay fees are relatively high for those of us who are not professional eBayers. The rate, although I haven't checked it lately, is close to 15 or 16% that eBay is charging to sell something on its platform. But you may or may not be able to cut through all the clutter, visual clutter, all the digital clutter on eBay, because there's so much to sort through and who's looking at your listing. My opinion, although other people may have, their mileage may vary on the matter. I've seen eBay become somewhat of a buyer's market in the last 5 years, or even longer, as more and more things have cluttered up that marketplace. So if you find an auction house that has a reputation for selling paper, for selling ephemera, for selling that kind of material, you should be able to capture more attention from the people who are interested in buying your material than, say, throwing a whole bunch of bread out on the water and hoping that, all the ducks of the world, find it and bite. Um, so on the other hand, you may end up paying more to the auction house to do that marketing, make that catalog, take those photos, conduct the auction, do the invoicing, pack the orders, ship them to the customers, collect the money. But it's a job, and that's what you're paying them for. And you more often than not, for the very good things in your collection, a well advertised auction is going to bring you a premium price. And there are going to be things that are going to be at a slightly lower price, and eventually market forces should even things out, and you should get a very fair value for your collection at auction, all things being equal.
Okay. How you do determine whether a collection should be sold as a whole or in individual postcards?
Well, it really comes down to dollars and cents. So we have sold many individual postcards, and I may have sent you an example or two. And I don't think this would be a mystery to anybody that's on this Zoom session. Many individual postcards for 100, 500, 1,000, in some cases, $2, 3, $4,000 for an individual card. If it has a very specific interest to a very laser focused and moneyed group of collectors. So, early baseball postcards, that should come as no surprise. Halloween postcards. In my magic example, we've had postcards signed by Houdini, and especially very rare ones bring plenty of money. So that's going to be a determining factor. It's going to be far easier for the hobbyist or somebody who's casually interested in selling things to sell postcards 15, 20, 30, 50, 70, 80, $100 at a time. In my instance, because I have a staff of people and, we have overhead and all the costs associated with running a business, it's going to be hard for me to justify selling individual cards at relatively low, dollars. So then you're going to have to make groups. And we've also had great success making thematic groups. Could be linens, it could be a specific printer, it could be a specific subject. So a specific photographer, perhaps, and, trying to facilitate a sale where people are going to compete for those items at an auction by selling them in groups.
So a couple of questions about the process and preparation. What information do you need from a collector to accept a collection for auction?
Okay. The basics are, great place to start. So how many cards, what condition are they in? What are your goals? I think is an important one that I ask anyone interested in consigning to our auctions. So that could be, I want to make sure I'm not burdening my children. I need the most money possible. And, I need you to make, sell as many individual cards as you can to squeeze every last drop of juice out of the lemon. I'm looking to, get it done quickly. I need the space in my home. They say in the auction world, there are 3 Ds, 3 main reasons that people want to sell their things at auction. And the first one is death. Somebody died, or I'm worried about my impending death. And the second one is divorce. I'm getting divorced. I need to turn this into money because it's easier to split up money than it is to split up things, postcards, or whatever your collection may be. And the third one, which we hear the most often, is downsizing. I'm moving to a smaller place. I don't have room for these things anymore. And so it's time for me to pass them on and turn them into cash. Postcards maybe don't fall in the downsizing category because they're awfully easy to store, but we have received consignments of 100,000 postcards at a time. And so in that case, I think it does actually qualify.
Does a description of the postcards collection has to be detailed? Does it have to be appraised by somebody beforehand? How
We've
detailed you
we've
need
we've
this
sold
picture?
we've sold enough postcards to have a pretty good idea of what we're dealing with a basic description or photographs. Occasionally, we will do a Zoom call or a FaceTime call. Somebody can hold up a phone or a laptop and page through their collection and show us what they have. Most dedicated collectors, of course, are going to be able to describe what they've collected over the years. The description tends to be more important when the person consigning the items is your heirs, because maybe they don't share your interest the way you did and can't describe it as accurately as you did. But most of the dedicated folks who are going to be the primary collectors should be able to give us a good idea in words or pictures or both what we're going to be dealing with.
Okay. If you consider it to take this collection or to for an auction, how your the collection is provided to you? Do it have to be mailed or?
Depends on the size of the collection. So frequently, if it's just individual cards, yes, those can be FedExed or mailed to us. For very large collections, we have actually a company we work with that drives around the country to pick up collections of some substance and size. We've even traveled many times overseas. I've filled shipping containers full of collections, although not of postcards. There are parts of those collections that have been postcards, but really, by land, by sea, by air, we've got all those bases covered.
Okay. And you provide the photography or anything to put in your auction, right? You take the
Right. So what are you hiring an auction house for? We were talking about that a little bit earlier. The description, the condition, the photography, the front and the back, the message, the historical significance of the item, the size, the quantity, an estimate of value. We're happy to work with, of course, the consigners who know far more about their collection than anyone else, to describe them as best we can. Of course, we'll do the sorting and the packing and the shipping and the billing and collect the money, pay out the consignor, so on and so forth, advertising the auction. And you asked about examples. So while we don't do it with every auction, we do with many create a catalog. This is a very fancy one we did in 2023. We did an auction, and some of you may know Ricky Jay. He was a film actor and a writer and a performer. And so this was actually a hardbound book that we made for an auction. This was a feature in the Chicago Tribune about the auction, but we made what I consider to be a very, very handsome auction catalog. And while we don't do them all hardbound, this was a $1 million auction. We've certainly done more than our fair share of beautiful softbound catalogs of ephemera and posters and all kinds of things. So that's just one of the ways we go ahead and market these collections. I don't know if the name Mark Rucker means anything to anybody on the Zoom call, but he had a wonderful collection of ephemera, and we featured many of his postcards in a sale about a year and a half ago as part of a whole sale focused on ephemera.
Okay. So, what type of auction are there? A live, online, absentee? How the auction works?
So I would say 95% of our auctions happen simultaneously live and online. You can watch them on your computer screen just as you're watching the Zoom call, and you watch me and my colleagues get up there on the podium, and you can bid with your mouse button and click, 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 click. We can also have you leave your bids with us absentee, as if you were mailing them in the old days, and we'll bid for you. We can call you on the phone and you can bid live, participating with our staff there on auction day. And then, of course, if you want to be extremely old fashioned about it, you could show up. We have a big gallery in Chicago with showcases and track lighting and all the kinds of artwork on the walls, and you can raise your paddle and bid that way. Occasionally, we will do an online timed auction, but that is not our preference.
Thank you. How do you set the starting price or the
In our
price?
case, the starting price, let's say, and I don't have a postcard in front of me, but whatever the object is we've estimated the value based on previous sales, and let's say we've estimated the value at $200 to $400. We always start the bidding at half of the lower number. It's our theory that if you start it at a reasonable price, you get people excited, you get people bidding, you get some momentum going. And we would work to set those estimates with the consigners. And we have a staff of catalogers that will do the research based on eBay sales and auction sales to come up with a reasonable estimate of value.
What kind of fees does the consigning postcards will expect to pay?
For the most part, you're gonna pay, whether it's with us or somebody else, somewhere between 15 and 25% to the auction house. And there are many folks in the auction business who are going to charge you for insurance, for cataloging, for photography. That's not how ours works, but somewhere in that range is pretty standard.
And how long does it take the whole process from you receiving the collection and being sold or
That
being
depends.
auctioned?
It depends. It depends. We may have a sale coming right up in 2 or 3 months where your postcards would be a perfect fit. If somebody called me tomorrow and said they had a postcard signed by Walt Disney or something like that that would fit into our July auction of pop culture material, I could get it in. But if we were looking at something dedicated, it could take longer, and it's going to really depend on where your material fits in. I mentioned Mark Rucker earlier. He had so much material, we had a dedicated auction just for his collection that we added, consignments from other collectors too. And I would say from start to finish, that probably took 6 months. He had a whole lot of stuff.
Okay. What happened to a postcard or a collection if it doesn't sell at auction?
So for us, the options are we return it, we offer it again at a lower price. If they're very inexpensive, we could donate it to a charity of your choice. I would say our sell through rate would be close to 90, 95%. So it's the exception, not the rule, that the item's not going to sell. But most frequently, we would offer it a second time.
So you can rebid, okay.
Yeah.
Sold to another time. Once the collection is sold, how long does it take for the owner of this collection to get the funding?
To get there to be paid?
To be paid.
The most important question, of course.
Yeah.
As soon as people pay us, we can pay the consigners. So in our case, that's about 30 to 45 days, depending on how quickly we receive the money from the buyers. And my philosophy is fast pay makes fast friends. So we try to get people paid as quickly as we can.
So does it happen that the winning bidder doesn't pay and
About 1% of the time, unfortunately, there are people who, yes, they don't honor their commitments.
so what happened?
You run it again, you offer it to the underbidder, all those options we discussed before. If there's been competitive bidding, usually there's somebody waiting in the wings to buy it.
Okay. Who is doing the shipping and the sold postcard? You are.
Well,
Okay.
not me
No,
personally.
no, no, you
I've
personally.
graduated. I've graduated from that class. Yes,
Yeah. And you offer also international
we
shipping,
we send items all over the world. Yeah,
and you pay the shipping costs, or is
the
included?
buyer pays the shipping cost once they've purchased the item. Yes.
Also, is added to their costs.
Yes, that's their responsibility. Not doesn't factor into the auction. To what the consigner would receive. Yeah.
What happen if the buyer dispute the condition of the postcard once they receive it?
Well, we send them a nasty letter, and no, most people are reasonable, but occasionally you deal with people who say, "Well, that hair wasn't in the picture," and you just try to appeal to their most reasonable side, and occasionally you have to cancel a sale and relist things. It's you know, most people who are serious collectors are going to ask questions before the auction takes place. If there's a huge collection, we were selling, for example, collections of candid photographs, groups of candid photographs in our auction last week. One bidder asked, in one case, there were 200 or 300 pictures, and they wanted individual, we staff member laid them all out on a table, and here's, here's the first 20, here's the next 20. And so, all those services are available from us from anybody who wants to know the condition of all the items. It's pretty hard to dispute with an individual card. Here's the front, here's the back. The picture tells the whole story there.
How do you promote, market and promote the auction?
So I showed you the catalog earlier, and those get mailed out to prospective bidders and folks we know who are serious collectors. We advertise in many of the antique journals, Main Antique Digest, the Ephemera Society magazine. We use a very targeted email system to reach out to people. We make phone calls to buyers that we know are serious who've participated in our auctions before, direct emails. We have a publicity firm that we use when something is really prominent and is going to end up maybe getting us a headline or two. We've done many television shows. I go on Antiques Roadshow as an appraiser, so that helps raise our profile a little bit. And then, we do some social media promotion on Facebook and Instagram to promote all of our auctions.
So, the generic question, have you seen any change in the trend of postcard collectors or type of postcard that are popular in the last, I don't know, pick 5, 10 years or?
I guess what I would say is the good things are getting even better, and everything in the middle of the pack and the bottom of the pack is getting a lot more accessible, and those prices are kind of flattening out, if not dropping. The big question I think on every auctioneer's mind, and probably on a lot of collectors' minds, is who's coming next? Who's the next generation that's going to pick up your hobby and postcard collecting or books or poster anything, right? As this silver wave of baby boomers decides that they don't want their collections anymore, you know, what's the next thing going to be? I was in a number of antique stores over the weekend in Minneapolis area, and I saw a lot of young people there browsing and buying. And I'm not saying they were buying postcards, but there is some youthful interest. But also, as everything becomes even more and more available to anybody online, the super rare things are going to continue to be just top of the heap. Everything else is widely available if you are willing to put in a little time searching for it. And I'd say that's a trend across the entire business.
Anything else that I left out that you would like to share for sure before we open for question to everybody?
um no, I think you've covered all the nuts and bolts. I mean, individual listeners may have
Yeah,
a
no, they
question or
have.
two, but I think you covered a lot of ground.
All right, thank you.
You're
So,
welcome.
if you want to ask a question, unmute yourself.
When you sell a group or someone's collection, do you itemize each item so they know what each item sold for?
No, so I think what you're asking, are you asking about an individual lot that might be made up of 5, 10? So no, we would give you a count on the number of items. Let's take, for example, we had one collection where it was all by city. and we received album after album after album after album. Well, at a certain point, you know, there's 200 in this album. There's, it's on Boston and they collected, and here there's 200 on Boston in this album. But we're not going to go. It's just not efficient use of anybody's time, unfortunately, to say, okay, the lot sold for $480 and there's 200 in here. I mean, we're going to send a statement, lot 1, lot 5, lot 12, these were all yours, and with the descriptions and all that kind of thing. So you'll have all that information, but we won't break it down to the granular level.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Michael?
My question is, if you have a large collection of, or say you have a collection of 2,000, 3,000 postcards, how do you describe that to potential buyers?
Well,
you don't show every card, right?
You can't show every card. It's
Right.
just not practical. But I mean, I suppose if they were, each one was worth $1,000, we would take all the time in the world. But we would describe the quantity, we would describe how they are stored, we would describe the subject, we would describe the condition, we would describe the perhaps the printers, the locations, the dates that they were produced, and we would give a reasonably long description. And then we would include a line or two about, additional images are available on request. 2,000, I don't know that we would offer to give somebody a list of all 2,000 cards. We frequently with bidders have done FaceTime calls where we have paged through albums for them so that they get a good sense of what's in a collection. We're willing to bend over pretty far backward to try to serve the customer and get the consignor the most money within reason.
Do you, a collection that size or larger, do you try to sell them all as one collection, or will you break them down into smaller lots?
It would depend really on where the value lies. So if you told me that you had a collection of 2,000 postcards printed between 1980 and 1990, I'm probably not going to break that down. If you told me you had 2,000 real photo postcards of tavern scenes from, Nevada, and they dated from, 1890 to 1920, I'm probably going to take all the ones out that show slot machines. I'm probably going to take all the ones out that show back bar bottles of whiskey. I'm probably going to take all the ones out that show people playing cards or dice or gambling in some way. We're going to try to make it into some logical subset of groups if there's good value there. But if they're, 5 and 3 and 5 and $1.50 postcards, we're just going to sell them as a group.
Okay. And one last question. I'm assuming that the seller pays the fee. I know some auctions the buyer pays the fee.
Oh no, we get fees on both ends because otherwise I couldn't make a living on 15-20%.
Okay. Oh, so the buyer pays the fee and the seller.
Both sides, yeah.
And they're about the same.
Pretty much every auction house, yeah.
And they're about the same percentage.
Our buyer's premium is 20%. People at Sotheby's are charging a crazy 28%. I mean, it's all over the map. Since day one, we've kept ours at 20%.
For both sides.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome. My pleasure.
Okay, thank you. You're very kind with your time. We do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We had a presentation a while back where somebody said, okay, let's say you got 10,000 cards you're going to sell and they're going to buy it as opposed to auction it. They kind of said, okay, we're going to look at maybe we're going to start at 10 cents a card.
Okay.
And then we'll maybe look a little. In general, do you find that people come to you probably with higher expectations than reality?
I'd say expectations are as varied as the people who bring them to us. I've had people that have come to us, John, and they've said, I don't ever want to see this stuff ever again. Whatever you do, make this leave my house, my whatever. I've had other people that, yeah, every piece is worth $1 million, and everything in between, right? Generally speaking, your heirs are not going to think and of your collection, whatever it may be, in the same terms that you will. They won't revere each card. They won't, think about where you bought it or how you found it or the search and all those wonderful things that collectors love so much. They may be very interested in the money, but they may not be very interested in this one is worth $50 and this one is worth $30 and this one's worth $500. So it's the answer is just kind of multifaceted, because there are some people who say, again, make this go away, and there's other people that say, I need to buy a new car, and I need $25,000, and so that's the goal, and anything short of it will not suffice.
Yeah, interesting. Second thing, my wife doesn't really think I need any more.
Yeah.
How would we know what auctions you're doing? Do you have a website we can go to follow what your auctions are doing?
Absolutely. So our website is potterauctions.com, and it lists upcoming sales. It shows all of our specialties. We're usually running 3 or 4 months in advance in terms of upcoming sales. It lists all the previous auctions we've done, and you can write in, and hey, I mean, we get inquiries every day. I've got this, I've got that.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for your time.
My pleasure.
There's a question on the chat by Ronnie. Are the bulk of the postcard in a large collection, each auction individually or as a group?
I think we kind of talked about that before. So, part of the service that we provide, and we do it frequently in concert with the collectors who are, bringing their things to us, is to determine this sells by itself, this sells by itself, these 3 sell as a group. I'm probably not going to sell each Halloween postcard individually, though they have, good value. I'm probably going to make a group of 5, 10, 15, 20 or more. But if you have a postcard autographed by Babe Ruth, you can better believe I'm going to sell that on its own.
I want to say that your fees to the seller are less than I would have expected, since I'm paying close to 15% to eBay. It's a little less than 15, but you're essentially supposed to promote. You're expected to promote it, and I promote it like 3%, and they suggest 14. But I mean, obviously, you're making up the other half with the buyer's premium. But the fact that you're only charging 15 to 20% for all the work you do, it seems like a very good value.
Well, all contributions are appreciated, and if you would like to pay more, I would gladly accept more. So, that would be fine by me, Philip.
I'm not giving up anything. It's my heirs that'll be bringing it.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Let them know we
Tom?
had this discussion.
Tom?
I wonder if you can talk generally about grading companies, and it doesn't relate to postcards, but I see and hear so much about grading companies related to sports cards, hockey cards, baseballs, and I guess I just don't quite get. I get that there's fakes out there, but I just don't quite understand why it's such a big and important deal in a certain part of the auction world.
I think that it comes down to one word, and that is commoditization. So the goal here, well, maybe it comes down to more than that. Personally, not a fan, but market realities are market realities. And so if you want to sell a card, let's say you've got a Mickey Mantle rookie and you want to sell it for the best possible price, the market reality is you've got to get it graded by, CGC. And I mean, I'm trying to be diplomatic.
Oh, you don't have to be.
So, I don't do many appraisals. I'm personally an expert on Magic memorabilia. I would take the Pepsi challenge with anyone in the world. Without being braggadocious, I know more about that than anyone, period. I'm not going to go appraise a baseball card collection. But one of the rules of being an appraiser is that you are not allowed to charge a fee based on what the appraisal comes back at. It is an absolute no-no. Look in, the appraiser standards guide and all that. Well, the folks who grade baseball cards and the folks who grade comic books, to just use two examples, if you have a very valuable comic book or baseball card, they charge you a percentage of the value that they are going to grade that object at for their services. And that percentage, if the item is six figures or potentially even more, is a huge amount. I mean, it's literally a percentage of what the perceived market value is. To me, I'll just say it, that should be illegal. I mean, that should be illegal. And we can have a conversation about other auction houses that may or may not have invested in some of these grading companies and get preferential treatment. But they've commoditized, these objects. And, I don't think anybody buying a Batman #1 that's encased in a piece of plastic or a Mickey Mantle rookie card or whatever, is doing anything but, putting it in their safety deposit box and hoping that it goes up in value. They're sure not reading the comic book. So, I mean, although I have seen one really gauche giant frame display of all these graded X-Men, it was the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. And they were all with their holograms and their little plastic cases. But I mean, it's the market reality. Certainly, we've sent our fair share of things out to get graded. I mean, they're talking about slabbing documents now and all these crazy things. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling. I don't know that I'm giving you a great answer, but you kind of don't have a choice if that's the kind of merchandise you're looking to sell.
Okay, just a second. I had one on the chat by Ronnie. Is there an approximate minimum for a special card? Maybe not a Babe Ruth, but
Sure.
under 500 value. These a rare card or?
I think that it does come down to dollars and cents. And so like the judgment call that we typically make at our office is the grading costs this much, the ultimate value of the card or the comic or whatever it may be is that much. And so we decide that the investment is worth it or isn't worth it. We have that conversation with the consignor, and then we either, take that step or we don't. And occasionally you send things in and the grade is not what you expected it to be, and everybody kind of gets disappointed, and that's the way it is. We sell a lot of vintage posters. You can see some on the wall behind me. And, we get them linen backed and we get them restored. And sometimes that's a great investment. And sometimes you're maybe doing a nice thing to preserve it, but it wasn't the best use of your dollars.
When we buy postcards or something, usually we put them, if they're not already, in a sleeve or in a hard plastic or something. And then I talk to dealers and I talk to others, and I haven't ever talked to an auction house, but when you get them, then a lot of times they have to take them out of the sleeve and then they'll erase the price and price it again, maybe put it back in their better sleeve that makes it look a little better. What is your feeling about, I mean, as long as we have these things and we keep them together and we're protecting, but once we turn them over to you, is it worth our time to take them out of the sleeves, or do we just leave that to you?
I'd leave it to us. I mean, that's a bit of a judgment call.
Yeah.
individual cards, we're going to try to make them look as beautiful as possible, and we're going to take them out and put them back in as many sleeves as we have to get you the most money.
Yeah.
I wouldn't suggest taking things out of albums, or if you have long boxes full of cards, yeah, I would, just let it be, our issue to solve.
Right.
We have photographers who've come up with a bunch of clever ways to show, they were today at work, they were shooting comic books. And they were not individual comic books. It was Hawkman, and it was 40, copies. And they have a way of showing, I firmly believe, showing the quantity, the big stack of them, and a few little glamour shots, to give everybody an idea of what's in that stack. So that's our problem, not yours.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay.
I will share now some pictures that Gabe sent me to give you an idea.
And maybe I'll just narrate once you show the photos. I don't remember each. So there's an example, just Hal, to answer your question. They found a way to leave most of them in the sleeves, and yet you can see that here we have Coney Island postcard grouping, and they fanned them out nice and neat to show everybody the quantity of material that's in there without having to take every card out of the sleeve.
Right.
Okay, here we've got Bathing Beauties and Pretty Women. And then my guess is that in this case, it was many fewer cards in the lot. I don't remember exactly how many was in this grouping, but gives you a different sense of how we might present them. So in this case, I remember this very well because I love this consigner, guy from Pittsburgh, and he just has a mania for whatever reason for diners, and these were all linen diner postcards, and so we sold the whole group, and then we just collaged in the one scan there, and then we had secondary images that showed other images from the collection. But if somebody wants to see them all, there they are. We can flip through them or send more photos as necessary. This was Christmas postcards and Santa Claus, I believe, and I think embossed and whatnot. No comment there other than Christmas is coming right up. There you go. So I was talking about baseball. This was from Mark Rucker's collection. I don't remember if Ty Cobb is in this one, but I think this was I think we sold this for a couple $1,000s in his auction. I think Cobb is right in the middle of the second row. I can see his ears kind of flapping out there. So here's one that is really kind of a nothing postcard, except it happens to be signed by Ernest Hemingway. So this sold in a book auction, not an ephemera sale, not that long ago. And here's an instance where Tom was asking about slabbing and authentication. Here's a case where we could have gotten a letter from PSA or one of the authentication companies to prove that the autograph was real. That would have cost, I don't know, $100 or something. Oh, this is not particularly illuminating in terms of what it shows. This was a postcard album kept by a magician named Stanley Collins, who lived in London. And this is one of the first times we sold a postcard collection. I don't remember, there were 60 or 80 cards in there. We got like $18,000 for this little album of postcards. There's Houdini on his biplane, and he claimed to be the first person to fly an airplane in Australia. He's standing there in the plane, and that's his mechanic in front of the plane. And we sold this card last year, I believe, for $4,000 or give or take. No one had ever seen the photograph before. It's a real photo postcard. Here's another Houdini, which I really think is great. This is a souvenir card that folds open. And Houdini is in the bottom there of the card. And he's standing next to the Iron Maiden that he escaped from on stage in both Glasgow, Scotland. That's October 1909. He's standing on stage there. and you can see the crowd watching him in the above on the scene up there. Halloween postcards, of course, very popular. We'd be selling them as groups, but here's just an example from an auction a few years ago.
Yep, that's the last one.
Okay, great.
Was Houdini a pilot?
He did fly the plane. I mean,
Really?
he claimed to be the first person to fly in Australia. Somebody else, I think, beat him by a day or two, but he always claimed that, you know, when he was there with his plane, he was the first guy.
Besides cards that are autographed by somebody, what type of postcards tend to have the highest value?
Again, it's the topical stuff. You know, you just got to think about, you know, beer related, or, you know, certain advertising cards, sports, of course. And like that Ty Cobb card was not signed. That was just a baseball postcard. You know, world events, photographs no one's ever seen. Obviously, condition is important. So you're just looking for rarity, and you're looking for, you know, my personal feeling is the cross collectible appeal is where you're going to get the best result. So you might have a postcard collector who's interested in the card, and you might have a baseball collector who's interested in the card, and it's that Venn diagram that's really going to help drive, you know, real competition at an auction.
Okay.
I think eventually, though, in that instance, the sports collectors are really going to be the ones who are going to be driving the price.
I learned something again on one of these interview type things that she does so well. My expectation was always that older postcards are going to be worth more than, say, post 1950. And one of the gentlemen who spoke said actually some of the post 1950 cards can be very desirable as well, particularly if it's something like Disneyland and things like that.
Sure.
How much does age come into some of the stuff that you paper type stuff that you do? Is it more?
I mean,
age?
if you had a postcard inviting someone to an Andy Warhol opening, I imagine to be quite valuable. You know, again, you have to think about what's the market you're selling your card to, right? I mean, I know one collector. He's an art collector. He has no interest in postcards unless they have to do with what he calls mail art. There's a whole subset of contemporary art that is called mail art, and postcards fall in that category. Let's say you had Disneyland is a great example. You know, opening day of Disneyland or showing a specific attraction. I mean, we've gotten crazy results for Disney memorabilia. But again, you're selling those things more than likely at a high price to the Disney collector, not to the postcard collector. I have a friend, Linda Servon, who collects Disney related stuff and collects postcards like crazy. She says she's always selling the Disney stuff's always going to a Disney guy, not the postcard people.
Okay. One other question. You going to do any magic tricks for us?
you don't want me to do that. No. Leave it to the professional.
Can you make me disappear?
Leave it to the professional. Yeah.
What if you're doing view cards, just straight view cards? Are there differences between the regions of the country or things like that you've noticed?
I mean, I'd have to look back. We had one big collection in terms of, you know, views, and boy, I've got to believe that it's going to be the more populous places, but I don't have I don't have it like buzzing in my head. Oh, absolutely, it was Los Angeles, or, you know, oh, absolutely, it was, you know, Detroit, and it's showing Henry Ford's assembly line. Caught me off guard with that one a little bit.
Sure.
How did you get started in the auction business?
So I was hired to appraise a giant collection here in Chicago. A gentleman by the name of Jay Marshall. Jay was on the Ed Sullivan Show 14 times. He was Ed Sullivan's favorite comedian and magician. And Jay lived his life like an episode of Hoarders. He had 3 buildings, and he bought everything he ever wanted, 80% of which was trash. I mean, there was one room that was all broken bicycles, and I mean, but The other 20% was world-class, unbelievable stuff. He had 250,000 books in those buildings. I mean, it was incredible. I wrote a whole article about it for Chicago Magazine. And so when he passed away, I was hired to go through the collection, separate the wheat from the chaff. And then we had an auction for the family after we'd figured a whole bunch of things out, what to donate, what to throw away. And to just kind of breeze through that story, we then ended up doing another auction and another auction and another auction. I'd been around antiques and auctions and collectibles. My father ran a stamp auction business when I was a kid. And so it was just kind of one of these things. I was training for the job I never knew I would have when I was, 15, basically. I started collecting when I was 13 or 14.
Al?
Gabe, please tell us how to say your last name.
The easiest way to think of it is like you're in a hurry. Fajuri. Like you're in a hurry.
Is because it's from Chile.
Correct.
It's
wonderful.
the Spanish pronunciation of the J,
Yes.
Okay.
as opposed in the American or French.
A hurry. Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
I like your shirt, by the way.
Yeah, Chicago Art Institute. You bet. Thank you so much. This has
Thank you.
really
Very
been
good.
good.
Yeah,
So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gabe.